Hey folks, Steve here with another Case Yellow 1940 video for you today. In this video, we'll be looking at turn 3 of the game, which would cover May 18th through the 21st. We are in a position here now where the Germans have crossed the Meuse, have a dagger of motorized units racing outward to try to figure out, just what are they going to try to do here. Um, I'm still not entirely sure how they're gonna handle this. The Dutch have surrendered, and now this means that the Germans can more specifically focus more on the Belgians because they do need to knock Belgium out of the war. And this is actually the first turn that Operation Dynamo can be declared by the Allies. And I was trying to think through the strategy here. Let me get this out of the way, I think, straight up. So we can declare Operation Dynamo as the Allies on turn 3 or 4. And very, very generally, I think the sooner is the better, because for every turn that we don't declare it is more time for the Germans to either penetrate the Allied lines and take the ports, or eliminate enough Allied units that those are fewer units that can get out of the evacuation port to begin with. So, in my mind, it seems like the best course of action is to do it sooner rather than later. The one issue is the Allies have an option. After the Germans take their first action shit, the Allies can decide to sort of do an interrupt and declare Operation Dynamo. If they do that, they do give the Germans additional victory points, which I think in the long term hull of the Allied game, they probably don't want that to happen. Like, they don't want the Germans to get any victory points, even if those victory points are generally rated as like half the value of an Allied victory point. If they can suppress the German point accrual, then they're going to be in better shape as they go to evacuate. Now, um, I can't tell. I'm not good enough with the game in terms of how it's portraying history to know, like, do I really, yes, want to do that interrupt and give the victory points, or not. As it stands right now, it's kind of really hard for me to figure out like how to manage this, because it could very well be that the very next chit that gets pulled out of the cup after the first German action will be an Allied move, in which case then they get to go. If that Allied move chit doesn't come out until the end of the turn, that could have given the Germans enough capability to run rampant. Now, the Germans only have 2 victory points, giving them, I want to say it's three victory points. Um, yeah, uh, 3 victory points. It will be, they'll have 5 victory points, I guess, compared to the Allied 8. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. In fact, what the Allied player can probably do is wait to see that first German chit to see how successful they are. And if it looks like this backfield is too much under threat, then maybe they will give them the 3 victory points and just get going with Operation Dynamo. Now, the thing will be, as I've kind of looked at how the game works, I've found that being out of supply is not that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad. There's a certain number of issues. It's all about how far can you get before you're actually considered out of supply. So if these German panzer units go, um, through here and go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. If they can get in like 3 moves across the next couple turns up to these cluster of evacuation ports, that could prove to be a very troubling situation. Um, so it's just really going to be hard to say how that's going to go. The other thing I'm going to call out, and it's something I read online, and I wasn't sure how to think about it, but this being the historical scenario, I guess I feel better about it. The Paris Hex victory points that you see right in the middle of the screen. You get 3 victory points for capturing all Paris hexes on turns 1 to 5 You get 16 if you capture it before it's declared an open city, and 8 if it is declared an open city in turns 6 to 10. This is not cumulative, so you don't get 16 and 3 for capturing Paris on turn 5. It's or. And what this is showing is if you capture Paris too early, you don't get victory points. You only get 3 compared to 16 or 8. Now you might say, well, what? I mean, surely we want to capture Paris as the Germans. Well, yes. Yes, indeed. We would. We do. But the way I guess that Ted Racer has sort of framed the game is the Germans, capturing Paris while the Allied armies are still active and present as a real danger, um, wouldn't have won the war or forced France's capitulation. It is only after, in terms of the design philosophy here, that the Germans really need to have cut off the Allied armies and disrupted their ability to operate in order for the capture of Paris to matter. So I think I was having this decision challenge earlier about what do I do? Do I start pressing down into Paris? Well, given those victory point rolls, a general advance towards Paris is probably not a bad idea, just to kind of be nearby. But it does mean, I guess it makes the decision point a little bit easier that we do want the bulk of our forces pointed out this way for the sickle cut. There is no point in trying to leap down to Paris because we're just not going to get as many victory points, and we're really going to need just about every single one that we can get. So at least until turn 5 or 6, we don't need to be that close to Paris. Once we get into turn 6, then yes, we'll want to be down there. But by that point, Operation Dynamo should be over, and the attention of the game will shift southward anyway. So we are kind of on the rails of history here. There's certain things that are predetermined in a way to have us ride those rails and still have our own decisions to make. I think this comes up in a lot of dark games where it's, how much railroading is railroading, where you have the Dark Valley, you get different sets of action shits that kind of make things a little bit on a particular narrative. I think for this, because I'm playing the historical scenario, I'm kind of okay with all of this because this is what I expected. Based on what I've read, these other scenarios like 2 and 3, which allow for more free deployment, historical, whatever, ahistorical things, are a lot more open in that way. You don't have to worry about it. So if you're watching this and going, oh gosh, this sounds really scripted, well, I'm playing the scenario that is intended to be, and I'm okay with that because I like seeing how I can navigate the historical narrative and what's set up for me, and can I even succeed at doing those things. But scenarios 2 and 3 obviously have a lot wider of a range of things you can be thinking about doing. The one other thing I should point out that will be important is that I think some folks have had trouble with getting victory points as the Germans in this game. There is one source of victory points that is actually quite important, and that is eventually getting some of the Maginot lines. So I'm a little unclear exactly on how you're supposed to calculate these things. So Maginot Line breach, control of any 3 contiguous French Maginot fortified line hexes. Ignore the flooded hexes for the purposes of this rule. They do not prevent fortified lines on either side from being considered contiguous. And when you do that, you will roll on the table to get variable VP. Now, that variable VP is basically just ranging from 2 to 4. Majority of the time, you're going to get 3, and on average, you'll end up with 3 if you get multiple. So every 3 contiguous Maginot Line hexes we get is 3 victory points, or it almost works out to be, assuming you can actually get the contiguous sets, 1 hex is a victory point if we can manage to get a proper breakthrough. Now, how do we even get that? Well, what I'm trying to figure out is what 3 matter. I'll show you an example. The fortified line starts here for the Maginot Line hexes, fortified lines. So starts here, ends a little bit off camera right here. Now, if you went and counted, you say, okay, well, there's 1, 2, 3. Let's say the Germans break through here and get 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, that's fine. And then you'd have to look at the next 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. But what happens if you get 1, 2, 3, and there's 2 over here that you take, but do you still count this third one? But you already counted these 3? Like, do you get to double count certain ones if you like? That's what I don't understand. Um, when do you really get these victory points, and when do you count them? Is it, if I got 1, 2, 3, and that's 3 victory points. Let's say I roll and I get 3. Then I get this line is at 1, 2, 3, because there's another one here that makes a set of 3, even though we already did these 2 from the previous 3. I have no idea, and the game does not make any real clarity on it either way. Now, I would like to think that you just count it the once, right? So you would get, let's just say we cleared every single Maginot line hex. 1, 2, 3, that's a set. 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 1, 2, 3, that's a set, and then there's 1 orphan. And if I just decide like that's the 3 you can get, you have to get them in those 3 sets, and I've defined those sets of 3. I've predetermined that. Does that count, right? And so you would, if you were being super efficient about it, that would be 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, 4 set, 5 sets, basically 15 victory points on the table, assuming you got every single set. But if you don't get them all super contiguous like that, right? Like you're getting sets of 3, but they don't work out clean, where you get, here's 3 and you miss out on 2, and then you get these 3, but you miss out on that one and maybe one of these other ones. Like, how does that work? And I can't wrap my head around what is the proper way of doing this. I just don't know. And truly, there's nothing in the rules that I can find that help in any way understand how to interpret that particular rule. I really do not. And I can't find anything on Board Game Geek either. So it's very much like I'm not sure how to handle that, because, well, I don't know. I'm troubled by it. So we're gonna have to watch out for this. I might even have to keep track of Maginot victory points separate and say, like, here's what the victory point value would be if we purely played it off of once you get the points for some component of 3 in a row, that's all you can get. And then a separate listing that is, here's how, if you counted every single set, in every permutation, right, where 1, 2, 3, that's a set. 1, 2, 3, this is a set. 1, 2, 3, this is a set. Like, you could get tons and tons of victory points by counting it that way, because it's any 3. You can, once you've confirmed you've gotten the 3, you can do it any which way you want. That's what I'm having trouble with. I truly don't know how to deal with that, and that is troubling. I don't like when victory point rules are messy. I had that issue with Korea Fire and Ice, where the VP rules were messy. That is annoying, because that's important for the game, right? If you interpret it one way, somebody maybe wins the game. If you interpret it differently, then they don't win the game. So why is the victory of a game up to interpretation? That's upsetting. I don't enjoy that. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and get into the game proper. I'm sorry for the long intro, guys. I'm chatty. I'm gonna address one thing that was brought up in the comment section of the previous video. Somebody was saying they want to see more of the actual, like, movement and attacks and stuff on camera. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if that's a good idea, because these videos will end up being even longer than they usually are. So in a couple of places, I might show you like how they moved, and I may talk about the combat. But if I show every single one, each turn will be its own set of like 10 videos, and I don't think that makes sense um, to do it, and it will soak up even more of my free time. And I just, it's easier if I'm not recording to be making the moves so that I know that I'm doing them right. I'm not like counting the hexes and then recounting the hexes on camera and fixing little mistakes as I make them and then moving on. Like, you guys don't know how much I have to watch myself when I play off the camera, because, I do make those little mistakes and I catch them right away and I have to redo it. And then that's like 5 minutes goes by and you guys are seeing me him and haw, and I don't think that's very fun for you. So I'll try to show what I can, but I'm really going to avoid doing it, generally speaking. Okay, so turn 3, sequence of play. We're going to have the Operation Dynamo raft segment. Well, that's not really that's not relevant yet. The air asset availability segment. So the Allies get their French Air Force back, and the Germans get their 5 Stuka, or Luftwaffe, however you want to look at it. Allied crossing interdiction. So this would be one of those times for the Allies, like, does it make sense to try this? The reality is none of the German spearhead are reliant on only one bridgehead. These guys can count through here. The Zocs don't project over the major river. It can count through this way. And this goes away because that was from last turn. Oh, he went down under the table. Okay. So he can count this way, and he's going to lose this supply marker issue. These guys can count through here. These guys can count through here. And if any one of these crossings is interdicted, the rest of the units can count through the other 2 rivers. So at this point, I don't think it makes much sense for the Allies to try to interdict a crossing. Their only other option would be up here, and I don't think that makes sense. I think that the Allies want to keep... Well, I guess the question is, do they keep it on the idea that they're going to use it in a combat before Dynamo is declared? Once Dynamo is declared, they lose the air asset anyway. But I don't know. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to try to interdict something? There's really no place where it makes sense any longer. Everywhere is basically covered and secure in terms of supply. So we're not even going to bother rolling for crossing interdiction. We do have the Stuka dive bombing segment. Now, there's something special as it relates to Operation Dynamo, that once the Allies declare Operation Dynamo, there is a Stuka bombing phase that is allowed to occur that will decrease the number of steps that the Allies can evacuate out of the port. They can get a maximum of 2 disruptions that will reduce the evacuation throughput from 6 steps to 4, or functionally, because only 1-step units can be evacuated, 6 units to 4 units. And that's pretty significant, right? That's a 33% loss. And anything that we can, even 1 disruption can help, which mean we would need to at least hold back 2 Luftwaffe counters for that special segment. So if I just say, like, straight up, I'm going to leave that 2 for that purpose, and maybe even 3, assuming we miss one, we've only got 2 counters left. Those 2 we probably want to use to do some combat shifts. So is there any point in doing regular Stuka bombing right now? I could certainly see a couple of places where, like, it wouldn't be a bad thing to try to hit somewhere or weaken something somewhere. I think the disruption helps reduce their troop quality, but I don't think troop quality is really the issue. I think if we disrupt them and they have low movement, they can't get as far. And if we're lucky, we get a step loss. I don't think that's good enough right now. I think now that we're over the Muse, it's better for the Stuka to be used to shift combats. So we're not going to actually do any Stuka dive bombing this segment, I don't think. I think we're just going to hold them in reserve and use them. Now this is a little, gamey, right? We know that Dunkirk is going to be a thing. Whether or not it's in Dunkirk doesn't matter. So we're holding some Stuka in reserve, or a lot of them in reserve. I don't know. Is it gamey? I'll say it's not, because we want to be using our air power judiciously at this point. Okay, so the supply phase. Do we have any supply issues? Well, we've got some guys who no longer have supply issues. So thank goodness for that. Do the Allies have any supply issues? Well, they sure do. Let's see, out of supply. So these guys are technically out of supply. And I think that's it. I think everybody else is fine on supply. Looking around, yeah, I believe that to be the case, so nothing too crazy there. And now we have the action phase. So again, the Germans still have the initiative. And I do think that movement will continue to be their chit of choice. And then the Allies will have move and combat. Again, there's one special thing. When the Allies do execute Operation Dynamo, or begin it, they will play their move chit. Rather, their unplayed move chit will get used. They can conduct a move, and then they're still going to have their regular move chit in the cup. And from then on, for the next 3 turns, the Allies will get 2 moves in a combat. So they're going to be constantly pulling units back towards the evacuation port. So there will be a equalization of the number of action rounds, and very generally the Allies are going to want to use those move actions to pull back and pull units out pretty consistently, and it'll be a race to see just where do we pick the evacuation port. And I'll just say right off the bat, here's why we would pick Dunkirk, even though it's a historical option. You might say, well, why don't you pick something different? Here's why I would pick Dunkirk, and let's maybe do a zoom in on these ports. So we're going to do German move as the first thing, just FYI. I'm going to zoom in here for a second so you can see the possible evacuation ports. They're listed here with an E. So why would we not pick Boulogne? Well, we have these guys set up to just provide some screen, right? And they need to. Why do we need a screen? Because it's not going to be that hard to get up to these guys, because once you're past this river, there's a string of clear hexes to get up there. There's no defensive terrain besides the defensive works, which aren't that good. And there's a bunch of clear terrain around it and 3 hexes to attack it from. Calais is a little farther away, so maybe it's a little bit better. And it can be attacked from 3 hex sides. It is a city, which is better than a town. It can be attacked from 3 hex sides. 2 of them are clear, 1 of them is swamp. So assuming you've got some layered defense, Calais is a little bit better. And I'm going to talk about Ostend before we talk about Dunkirk for a second. It can be attacked by 1, 2, 3, 4, really 5 hexes. So a lot. It's a town, so not as good. And generally, there's still a lot of clear terrain around it. Now, the one advantage to Ostend is that it is sort of deeper in the Allied pocket. So where, for the Germans, they could be snaking up through here in that sickle cut, they'd have to cut deep east to get up to Ostend. And it is one that I'm thinking about, because there's all these layered rivers in front of it. So yeah, it's clear up here, but you've really got to work your way up to get up there. It is closer to the Allied lines, so generally it's going to be really good for that purpose, but I think the I think Dunkirk is probably still the better choice out of all of these because, uh, I mean, it's a town and it's got clear terrain. It has a defensive works like the rest. Well, and I should say Ostend doesn't even have defensive works, so that's a knock against it. Dunkirk has the defensive works. It is surrounded on all attack hex sides by river. Only two of those have crossing. So if the Germans are trying to use their motorized units to just come in there and smack them, they can only do so from two hexes. Now, those two hexes, there's a defensive works in one. This hex is also largely surrounded by a river line. There's a swamp here, there's a swamp here. I mean, Dunkirk makes sense because it is going to be harder for the Germans to get past, the same number of these different river lines all the way up here, get through the bad terrain, and attack across a river to try to get Dunkirk itself. So all things together with the terrain and the defensive protections that it has, that it's still pretty deep within the Allied pocket. It's just a little bit further west than Ostend, which is maybe one bad thing. It is probably still the best evacuation port for Operation Dynamo. Generally speaking, I think we are going to end up picking Dunkirk. Now, the German player would know that, but I mean, we're playing the historical scenario. It would seem odd if I picked a different one, but for Dunkirk, certainly there's a lot of game mechanic reasons to pick Dunkirk. So there you go. Sort of like in other games or um, games covering like D-Day, like the Allies picked the beaches that they did, and there's some good reasons for that. So don't sweat too much if you were concerned about choices. Like there's only so many choices that are truly valid. Okay, so this is now going to be the German move, and again I guess the goal right now probably will be to push west as much as we reasonably can. Oh, and I need to flip these HQs back. It's all good. We probably very much want to get as far out as we really can. It will be interesting to see how we do that because I think like these guys will be annoying. We want to deal with them one way or another. The French will continue to pull units off the Maginot Line to reinforce around Paris over time. And we've got to watch that we don't get cut off ourselves somehow. And I'm still trying to figure out how we have enough units to really do that. It's really hard for me to figure out like where does this make sense? Where can we pull units off the German line? I'm not sure there's very many places we can afford to do that. So we're going to try to push this way, use the mobile combats. We're going to pull some units down from the Netherlands. We're going to sort of reorient the game position, and then we'll see where we're at after that, and we'll have made that decision on Operation Dynamo. Okay, here we are after the German move and then also motorized combats executed. Now I'm a little cautious because these German armor are starting to look pretty beat up. Because some of just over time what's occurred to them, but they've managed to not lose any steps this action round. So you can see, we had these guys back here have to do some cleanup duty. We eliminated the one unit because it had nowhere to retreat to. The other one took a step loss. Well, it got a DE result. It means as a core, it flips and has to retreat and takes gets disrupted. So he's got some problems, though he can still kind of move around and be a nuisance, which is what the French are going to have to use them for, really. Sort of put in a position where, like, we still have units here that if we wanted to, we could press south or at least start seizing bridgeheads towards Paris. But we kind of need to watch out here. So we've effectively, because of the river line, sort of trapped this guy and this guy. But because this is just a minor river, Zocs are projected. And so these guys can try to pull themselves out, which is probably what they need to do at this point because they're going to just get put out of supply and crunched, is what's going to end up happening soon. Oh, And I forgot to move this guy up, which is what I should have. One, two. I think we would have just left them here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, maybe we would have had to move them up to here, which is a little dangerous actually. I probably should have thought about that first. That is a safer location for them. And then they otherwise would have been fine for attack supply. So I'm gonna have to watch out and make sure that I'm really careful how I'm doing this. Maybe would have come down here, and then he'd be. Well, no, he wouldn't be safe, would he? Jeez Louise. Okay. Well, I'm just going to have to watch out for that and be careful about how I do my attack supplies, because things can get pretty tricky pretty quickly. And I don't want... What I don't want to do is create a bunch of problems for myself here. So I think generally that's the move I should have taken and is relatively safe to do. But okay. So anyway, sorry. Hate doing that. So this is why I don't do things on camera, guys, because I end up having to fix stuff and make sure that I'm all set, and I'm still all set. I'm okay. I just got to be careful with how I set this up. So we've made a breakthrough. We're a little bold here. We pushed out, and we're actually going to be crossing at Maubeuge. We did not succeed in getting a bridgehead here, which is unfortunate. Neither did we down here. We did get a bridgehead over here, but I don't think it's really going to be impactful, because I think these guys need to keep pushing out this way. So if you look at the game position, can you see the danger and where the allies are at? Let me zoom in a little bit, and we can adjust the camera such that you can understand where things are. The bulk of the allied forces are still on the dial line. We still have Belgium there, which is its own annoying problem. You can see I've started to pull down some more units to be able to get into the fray here shortly. The next challenge for the allies is going to be not getting completely cut off. So that sickle cut, where we're starting to push out this way, you can see where there's a potential problem. So let's just say if the Allies did not declare Operation Dynamo, and the next chit we pulled was another German move, or German chit, and we decided to go ahead and move. Well, these guys right here could go 1, 2, 3, maybe, we could have somebody probably attack their headquarters unit and knock it out. But really, maybe with these guys, but these guys go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So while these guys can still travel out through Ghent, all of a sudden we are nearly at the point where we can push through and cut off the bulk of the Allied forces. Because we're going to start to clog up the lanes here for them to get out. And if they don't have attack supply, then they're going to have all kinds of problems over the long haul. Now we got to be careful, because it's still like, how hard can you go without totally abandoning your units? But if we chose to go a different direction, again, our goal really here are the evacuation ports. We can instead go out this way. Now, we could make a crossing, cut up through here, and maybe get up to Lille. We're nearly Lille, and that's going to give us, again, really good reach to swarm into the evacuation ports before the Allies have had any real chance to get out. And that's the key thing. If we can get in here and basically keep the Allies from being able to declare Operation Dynamo on schedule, or reduce their length of time that they can do it, and they don't evacuate a bunch of units, then that's a whole bunch of victory points that they're just not going to get. And then the Germans are still going to have to deal with a big swarm of Allied units, but they're going to just continually have supply problems. They will vanish pretty quickly after that, and then all the rest of the German forces, probably a little beat up, have a much freer hand pushing on Paris. So what the Allies are really looking at here now is a true danger scenario. The fact that the Germans very easily cleared through some of these one-step defenders, that's kind of my bad. I mean, they were only one step, so what else could I do? They were trying to cover the river lines and the river, the spots in front of the river bridgeheads, or the river crossings, I should say. Um, but the Germans are potent. Now, I did use 2 Stuka Luftwaffe counters for combats to ensure that I had enough shifts to succeed in whatever I was doing. I still have the 3 left over for hitting the evacuation port this turn. And if we were talking about like an opposed game, if the Allies decline to call Operation Dynamo, like we still have those air units to use at our leisure throughout the turn, maybe we will have lost them all. But if Dynamo doesn't start until like the end of the turn, or even in the next turn, then it kind of doesn't matter. The Allies lose their opportunity. So it is for that reason that we are going to have Operation Dynamo begin. So we're going to take a move chit off the board and put it here. This is not the one that's in the cup. The one that's in the cup gets to stay. And we're now going to initiate the Operation Dynamo steps. So first, we're going to place the end Dynamo marker. Let's see. End. Uh-oh. Do I not have an end Dynamo marker? Okay. Well, I've got a problem. I don't know what I did with the counter that says end Dynamo. I might have to do a makeshift one. Hold on. End Dynamo. Found it. Okay. So we're going to do that. We're going to place that on the turn record track 3 turns ahead of the current turn. So this would be 1, 2, 3. Turn 6 is when Dynamo ends. Now we're going to pick our evacuation port. We're going to go ahead and pick Dunkirk. All right. Now we have the Dynamo air marker. We're going to place the Operation Dynamo air marker nearby. So we know, you know what, I'll zoom in now that Dynamo matters. So you can see that a little bit better. The camera's kind of far away, and I'm reluctant to shift the whole camera stand up onto the table for the moment, but you can see the evacuation port, and then the air marker is situated there. Remove the other Allied assets. Immediately remove all over other used, unused, and limited air asset markers. So it's kind of an easy thing. We just take them off and we'll set them aside for the moment. And now, prior to Allied movement, after Dynamo declaration, the German player has the option to conduct the Stuka dive bomb attacks. And the other thing I'll do right away is I will give the 3 victory points to the Germans, just so I don't forget about it later. We do this at the end of the turn. I'm just going to do it now. Okay. Let's see. I'm just reading over to make sure. Okay. Okay. So we are going to have the Stukas hit it. We're going to have 3 attempts. Well, we don't have to use them all. If we get 2 hits, we don't have to do any more, I guess, is the thing to keep in mind here. So we could have still 1 more left over for combats if we so wanted to. So stupid dive bombing table. Doesn't look like there's any modifiers for this. Yeah, DRMs do not apply. So we're going to use our first marker, and we'll roll a die, and we roll the 5. So that is a disruption. We're going to just put them up here. I'm going to keep them off the hex itself so we don't get too busy. And we'll go ahead and use a second one, and we get a disruption. Okay, so 2 disruptions. These are going to go onto the turn track. Oh, aha, my bad. Oh boy, this is another mistake that I made. Oh wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, no, we're good. Okay, so we will have one more Luftwaffe marker left over. We've done 2 disrupts to the port, and let's see. We did not get shot down by the RAF protecting the Dynamo port. As far as I can tell, that did not apply. And so what we're really looking at here, yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything of super importance for the RAF right now, the Royal Air Force, in this given section. So yeah, so we did manage to disrupt the port itself after it was clear that that was going to be used as the evacuation port. So now the Allies can only get out 4 steps of units, basically 4 units. So 4 victory points this turn. Let's see, make sure, is it round or turn? Okay, it's in each round. Okay. But these disruptions are for the rest of the turn. So at most, the Allies are going to be able to get 8 victory points this turn if they pull everybody out. And the problem is going to be, as I zoom out for a second, they can't just pull everybody out. They have to have something to defend in front of the port while everybody gets out. So how are they going to manage to do that? I'm not sure. So here we have the movement. So again, this is going to be, oh boy, this is going to be tricky for them. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh boy, yeah, this is going to be tricky. So now we don't have to worry about the dial plan. We can start pulling these guys back if we want, and I think they're for sure going to try to do that. We need to think through where will there be a line of defense and which guys will head out and evacuate first. And unfortunately, I don't know if the Belgians can evacuate or not. I think the rules, it says that the French and the British can stack together, but I have a feeling like the Belgians do not get to hang out with the British and the French, is what it sounds like. I'm not 100% sure about that. If I check the stacking rules, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're assuming, like, you know, if the Belgians are busy trying to evacuate, they're giving up their cities, and they're probably going to be forced to surrender. But I think it still makes sense to try to pull the Belgians back as well, and they only surrender if they lose Antwerp, Brussels, Ghent, and Ostend. So as long as we hold Ostend and Ghent, then the Belgians will not surrender. So it does make sense to try to save the Belgian units and just make it a fighting retreat for the Belgians even. So that can play to the Allies' favor here. So okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to begin to do the movement. And if I check one other thing, the Allies do have rail capability. They can rail 1 corps, but no rail transport can end in any hex to the west of the 13th hex row, which is right around here, I guess. And from hex 10, okay, so south of the Somme, shielding Paris was the first priority. Okay, so we will be able to do that. But we have limited capability. Okay, man, this video is going to be a long one, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to do the Allied movement. The map will probably look quite a bit different when I'm done. Okay, here we are after the Allied movement. So amusingly enough, we didn't have anybody that was really close enough to evacuate. And the thing is, any reinforcements that come in, I don't believe can be evacuated on the action round or turn that they entered on. I think I read that in the rules somewhere. So we got a French division into the port, but they can't leave. They didn't have enough movement points. You need at least one more movement point to evacuate, and it took them 4 to get there. So I guess that's the con now that I'm realizing, like, even for these units to get into the port, they have to traverse the rough terrain. So that maybe we should have picked Ostend after all, but too late for that. So what the Allies have tried to do is try to get some guys back over the Sambre River here. This guy couldn't quite get over yet. The rest of these units are all peeling back, pulling back, trying to figure out, like, hold this river and crossing, try to get in front of these guys. This is still a nuisance. Pull everybody back so that we can try to get to the port. It's just the problem is we're still pretty far away, and if we had picked Ostend, it would have been like these guys next turn could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They would have just been able to get there. So I think there's definitely a challenge in, like, will we be able to even get anybody out? And I chose, rather than to get these guys out, I tried to make it so that we had a screen here, because these guys are going to come flying through here. We need something. We need something at these crossings. I can't leave them empty. I need some Zocs thrown up somewhere. And so there were some French units I maybe could have moved into the port, but they would lose a step getting there. And there's some decent combat power here that, in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, in terms of victory points, it is more efficient to evacuate, units that have low combat strength but are still the same number of steps if you evacuate them. If I had moved this guy in, he would have gone from a strength 4 to a strength 2, and this guy, from a strength 3 to a strength 2. We'd be losing some strength points where some of these other units, it's just a little bit better, and I'd rather try to hold the Germans down a little bit so that everybody else can get out, right? That, in my mind, that is how I want it to work, is have some defenders, have a bunch of evacuees, and try to get as many people out as possible. But I don't know. It's a tough call, right? I can feel the tension of you can't just have everybody run for the port, because then you just make it easier to penetrate the lines for the Germans to get next to the port. And all they need to do is get a proper retreat result, and Operation Dynamo is over. They take the port, and you're screwed. The rest of your units are screwed. So you have to not have guys evacuate. You have to get out in front. You got to pull back and then have a controlled funnel into that port and get out of there. So tricky business for sure. It is difficult. Now, the French did move this guy around a little bit to just have some Zoc havoc for these guys over here, which may come into, maybe an issue if they can stay there. I'm not sure that they'll get to stay there ultimately. And one other thing I should throw out there, the Belgians did throw up a line of defenders in front of Antwerp to delay the rest of the Germans. If we can get some Belgians out of the port, then hey, great, that's nice. I think once they're off map, that contributes to their surrender, but by the time that matters, Belgium would be surrendering anyway, so I might as well hold some of the Germans back where I can in front of Antwerp, just so that the Germans can't move forward with everything that they've got all at once to attrit these guys down. They've got to kind of navigate around this hinge. So heroic Belgian defenders will do what they can. So yeah, so there you go, guys. That is the Operation Dynamo beginning action, and now we're going to start pulling from the cup, and there's still plenty of chits left in the cup to go. And from here on out, it is random pull. So we'll pull the next chit, and it is actually Allied combat. I think the only problem is the Allies are not really in a good position to do any combats. If I just look around quickly, we now have a problem where attack supply is an issue. So I started to retreat the attack supply unit. I don't know if that was a smart move. I'm not sure how much that matters. But we didn't want to eliminate them so that we at least had the ability to counterattack around the port. As I'm looking around, attack supply. If I try to find the attack supply sources for the French, do they have any other attack supply? Okay, so Belgians are in attack supply. They could maybe attack, but I think that's a waste. British units can trace attack supply 3 hexes to an allied port, which right now that is a problem for the British anywhere that it really matters. And the French can do it 8 hexes to any hex of Paris. That's not going to be good enough for anything that matters. So unfortunately, due to the retreats, there's really no combats that are going to be worthwhile because they're not going to have attack supply. And so the penalties are just going to likely give the French, effectively like AL1s most of the time. So I don't think any allied attacks are going to make sense here. So now we're going to go to the cup again, and we get a German move or combat. I definitely think move is probably the right action here. So we're going to do move. We're going to see what else we can achieve here. I'm just trying to look through and figure out like where can we advance guys enough. Tricky. We know that the Allies are going to get another move, but that's really it from here. So they're not going to be able to counterattack. So anything we do, we can either set ourselves up for a good combat, or whatever. We can attack with our mobile units wherever we can to make some ground. I think the main goal will be to try to continue to push out this way. Will be our main goal. So yeah, let me try to take care of that, guys, and we'll come back with a different map. Okay, here we are after the German move. You can see there's a little bit now a bulge because they can't quite get past. They need to let this guy get eliminated. And then, there's there's a little bit of a dance now going on here where these guys have made it across into Maubeuge, but their supply network is a little constrained. But the Allies aren't going to be able to do any interdiction, so they don't have as much fear. But this guy is still kind of in an annoying spot. We cleared here. We actually pushed in the res, which is going to give us a victory point. We're holding a position. The French could try to maneuver their way out up here. They can't actually, they're not going to be able to attack this unit, and they're just going to put themselves out of supply if they go that way. So I think this is a relatively safe spot to put them, or to have the units set up so that we're generally applying pressure down here, but we don't need to apply that much pressure. We basically just need to have pretty good positions to pick up on a push south when the time comes. Otherwise, these German units continuing to press and push, threatening to put this guy out of supply, but not quite able to do it. He's got a supply line out, but he's going to have a hard time. He's going to have to make a decision what he's going to try to do. Try to come south or go north or whatever. And we continue to push our way up through here. So we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm not sure how the river line goes. Okay, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 movement points from Dunkirk with some of our Panzer divisions. But they're pushing really hard to get up there, and they could easily find themselves in a rough situation if the Allies could try to organize a way to attack or deal with them. Oh, and I forgot that I have to move this to its movement side, so that's my bad. Okay, so that was it for the German move, I should say. So things are pretty tricky. We did get a retreat up here due to the no attacker supply. So they weren't. If they had done better, they would have had the Belgians take a step loss, but the Germans continue to maneuver such that they can push or continue to push into Antwerp and the areas around that. So going to the Cup, I think the Germans would like to have a combat, but we'll see what we get. Okay, we get the Allied move. So first things first, we're going to have these guys leave. So this will be our first victory point step evacuated. I'll put them in the water. I'm not sure who else is going to get to go, but that's at least one victory point. I'll do the rest of the movement off camera. Okay, here we are after the rest of the Allied moves. You can see a general shift backwards. We still can't quite get to the port yet, but we're moving pretty quick. And we're just trying to protect this attack unit because we do want to get it pulled back and be able to do local counterattacks against the thin. What I wanted to do is have all three of these motorized stacks attack the German spear, but the way it works on a move for the Allies is you actually have to roll a die to see how many motorized units can attack. And I rolled a 1, and 1 is not going to do it this turn. Not going to be good enough for pretty much anything we would want to do. And so we had to give up on that idea. It would have been really nice to do that, but we just can't. So the pullback continues. And now we're going to have the last chit come out, which is going to have to be the German combat. Now, are there any good places for some combats? I mean, a few. We probably want to clear this hex, just because we want to have it totally gone before the beginning of next turn, so we have some movement. So this would really be 11, 17, 19 to 2, and I mean it's basically max chart roll, and yeah, he's kaput, so he's done. Let's see, have him advance after combat, doesn't really matter. Here, it might not be a bad try to make something happen. It would be 7 to 4, which is really 1 to 1. Probably not going to work, so we're going to have to let that guy go. Really, the big question would be, do we do attacks up here? And, I think we could certainly try. So we have 6, that's 2 to 1. Oof, over the river. Yeah, that's not so hot. I think we could do here. So 11 to 3, 3 to 1, shifts to 2 to 1 because of the defensive works, but I think that's good enough to try. Yeah, this would be good enough. And I rolled 6, so it's a DL1. He takes a step loss, and he has to retreat, but he can't retreat anywhere due to but I guess he could keep retreating like that, is how that would work. I believe you can do that. You can retreat more than 1 hex. Let's see. Oh no, it's only one hex, so he would actually get destroyed based on how I'm reading the retreat rolls. So maybe I have that wrong, but I think I'm right. So that's some trouble for the Belgians, and then we could try to make something happen here. It'd be 6-3. No, we're going to need to do a multi-hex attack on some of these for this to really work, which we'll do next turn or on the next action. We would have needed to move these guys to here, so I got to watch out for the bridge problems. There's no crossing from here to here, so that's a problem. The other thing would be to try to attack here, and we would have 9-4, so it'd be 2-1, which would shift down. Yeah, I don't think we can actually attack here either. It's just no good. So I think it's a bummer for the Germans, though, that came out to be allied move, and then their combat, because they would have much rather have had an opportunity to do combat, and then the Allies have to move, but they would have gotten beaten up quite a bit. Okay, so let's see. That's it for the normal stuff. So we're down to the turn end stuff, I think. Disruption removal, that's not really relevant. Bridgehead crossing, we've got a bridgehead, I think. Yeah, nowhere else does it really matter right now, the bridgehead situation. Terror bombing segment, there's no reason to do any more terror bombing, and so this is really done. I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't want to give the Allies victory points. Belgium is not surrendering yet. We can rearrange our refugees, so I think we'll certainly do that. I think some of these guys already have some. I think we'll do some. Whoops. Over here. And this one's really done. So they probably put something over here. Maybe that's what I can do. I don't know. That's it for refugees. Is it time to declare Paris an open city? I don't want to do that. The Germans got. Let's see. Well, let's do the rest of the victory points. We got the victory points to the Germans for, and I'll put the victory point stuff up here. We got the 2 for Operation Dynamo. The Allies did ship off a unit, a step, so that's a victory point. We do have a line of communication from Boulogne to the west or south edge of the map still, though that may change soon. So they're going to get 3 more victory points, which means they have 12. We have a good garrison in the Netherlands as the Germans, so that doesn't matter. And okay, that's it. So the Allies are now up to 12 victory points, pending to get a lot more once the Allies can start peeling stuff away. The Germans, let's see. We haven't captured the evacuation port. We did capture Rez down there, so that's a victory point up to 6. And then I think that's it. So we're making progress, but in terms of victory points, the Germans just aren't getting very much. That's the cold, harsh reality at the moment. So yeah, 12 victory points to 6. The Allies have twice as many as the Germans. The Germans have a long way to go. We're going to do armor attrition next, so we're going to pull the chits out. So first chit for the Allies is the first DCR, which is here. So it's just as well that they lose a step because they're going to get eliminated anyway. So that's a good pull for the Allies. And they'll pull their second chit, which is the second DLM, which, let's see, DLM is probably a motorized infantry. The second DLM is right here. I'm going to take a step loss. The Allies are out of mechanized replacements, so they're going to have a harder time keeping things up and at them. Germans have their chit pool, so we pulled the 9th Panzer. Got to figure out where that guy is. Uh-oh, is he in our spearhead? No. 9th Panzer, where did you go, my friend? Ah, up in Belgium. Okay, you take a step loss. That's really too bad. And then the second pool is the 4th Panzer. So I think we had, where's he at? 4th Panzer. He may be in our, yeah. 4th Panzer breaks down a little bit. That's too bad. Okay, so armor attrition is done. Replacements. I don't think we're going to have, we don't get any new replacements yet. So the Allies we have one infantry, or I'm sorry, we have 2 infantry replacements that we could use. He's probably going to get away, so there's no point in fixing him up. Those guys are mechanized, so they can't take a replacement. So I think what we'll do is we'll spend 1 to flip up one of these Paris defenders, and we'll spend another 1 to have a replacement next turn. So now the French are out of replacement points, and then the Germans have a few more replacement points, but they don't really have as much to spend it on at the moment. I think we may still, let's see, I don't think we have any reduced infantry at all. None that I can see, which is interesting. Probably means we should be attacking more with infantry where we can, but I'm not seeing any reduced infantry, so there's no replacements from that perspective. And the Allied better defense markers don't come into play yet. They will in a few turns. So that's it for turn 3, guys. Gosh, I'm sure this video is still epically long, so if you're watching these, thank you for doing so. But that is it. So what have we seen happen? Well, the Germans continue to expand their push, but it feels really hard to figure out like how much more can we go. I think the main thing is we need to clear Antwerp so these guys can shift down. That allows us to shift weight down and keep pushing pressure on while the motorized units, I went probably a little too far down south, and some of these infantry can come down and kind of make up the distance while the rest of these guys maybe make a play to cut off the Maginot line or try to continue to push west and make it so that we cut off the ports, which is something we potentially can do with these guys. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe we get a combat and we advance after combat. That would maybe do it, but we'll see. So that's all for the next video, guys. Thanks for watching. Sorry for a long video. You know how it is. But Operation Dynamo is underway. The Allies frantically working to get out. It may be I discover that I've committed too many units up here for the amount of guys that can leave. I need to keep that in mind. What's the maximum number of guys that can leave in any given turn? But still, there's a lot of victory points to be had. So we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Take care. Keep gaming.